This is checkmate. The game is over. The king does not have anywhere to go, and there is no way to protect the king. So that is the end of the game. So what you are looking at here is checkmate. This is checkmate, right? What exactly is checkmate, right? How do you deliver checkmate yourself? And how do you find a checkmate? This is exactly what we are going to be talking about in this particular video. So let's start right away. Before we talk about checkmates directly, you need to understand another important concept that we call check, right? What is check? Check is when your king is under the direct attack of your opponent, right? In this situation, you can see that the black king is being attacked by the queen directly, right? This is a check. So, and when your king is not on check, you cannot do any other thing. You cannot play any other move, or you cannot do any other thing. You just have to address the situation. You have to make sure that the check goes away, right? How do you do this? You can do this in three different ways. The first one is you need to move your king away from the path of attack. In this situation, this is the path here, right? From the e5 queen attacking um the black king on e8, right? So you need to move the king away from that point of attack. The second one is that you need to interpose, which means you need to bring a piece in between the black king and the queen and the white queen, right? So let's say, for example, there is a knight here now on g8. You can bring the knight in between the king and the queen, and then the checkmate is not possible anymore because now the queen is not directly attacking the black king, right? So that is another way to prevent a check, right? And the third one is what you need to capture the attacking piece, right? You need to capture the piece that is attacking your king. In this situation, this is the queen, right? So the third option is you capture the king and then you are free from the attack, right? So in a situation whereby one, your king does not have anywhere to go, you cannot move it away from the path of attack. Secondly, there is no piece that can interpose, that can come in between the queen that is attacking your king and the king itself. It might be any other piece that is attacking your king and the king itself. Then that is like a piece coming in. There's no piece that can come in to do that. And third one, there is no piece that can actually capture your opponent's the piece that is attacking your king, right? There is no piece that can capture it. If these three things are not possible, then we have what we call a checkmate. That is a checkmate, right? And then the game is over. So let's look at this particular um, game over here that we talked about, which is a checkmate, right? How did this checkmate happen? So let's look at this particular game, right? White started with e4 and then black responded with e5, and white played bishop c4 next. So bishop c4 controlling a very weak point on the black square, which is f7. This is a very weak point because it is only protected by the king, right? So you can see that immediately the white bishop is mounting on c4 and is controlling it. So let's see what black responds with. Knight out, trying to protect the pawn, right, and also developing their piece, right? And then afterwards, queen to d5, queen to d5, right? So immediately queen jumping, threatening this pawn, although protected, and also still attacking the f7 pawn that is very weak that we mentioned, right? So let's see what black respond with. Black then play knight f6, trying to attack the queen, maybe to make sure it moves away. And then what happens next? Checkmate, game over. White delivers a checkmate. And how is this a checkmate? We mentioned some of the things you need to consider when you are looking at a checkmate, right? The first one is that your king needs to escape, right? Does this particular black king, does he have any place to escape to? No. Everywhere is ramped up, one, and there's no place to go to for the king. This particular checkmate is what we call the scholar's mate. We call it the scholar's mate, and it is one of the fastest checkmates in chess, right? So it is just in 4 moves. In 4 moves, we've delivered a checkmate. So in this situation, like I was saying, does this king have anywhere to go? No. Secondly, is there any piece that can come in between the king and the queen. No, they are too close. They are just beside each other, right? So there's no piece that can interpose, that can come in between them. So that the second option is not available. And lastly, is there a way for this queen to get captured? The piece, the queen that is that is checking the king. Is there a way for it to get captured? Can this king capture it? No, because the bishop on c4 is already protecting the um queen. So it is not, it is impossible for the king to what to say they want to capture the queen. So these three options that I mentioned that can make you to escape a check is not available, then this is a checkmate, right? This is a checkmate, and then the game is over. Another thing we can talk about, right? Another thing you can talk about is the back rank check. Back rank check is one of the most common checkmates that we have seen in chess games, right? It is very, very common, right? So, what do you think will happen, right? If this a1 rook plays to a8, what do you think will happen? Then that is a checkmate, right? How is this a checkmate? Because the king does not have any escape route. The king does not have anywhere to go. Again, we are going to look at the three options that we said we should look at to know if a check has turned to a checkmate, right? The first one is that, is there a way for this king, is there a place for a square for this king, this black king to go to? There is no escape square. So it is impossible for this king to go to any square on the board, right? It is impossible. One, because there are three different pawns on f7, g7, and h7 that are already blocking the king and preventing it from coming out. So this is one of the options. Then secondly, is there any piece that can interpose, that can come in between the checking rook and the king itself? No, there's nothing, right? So this is the second thing. Let's assume there was a bishop on c5. You can easily bring back your bishop to f8, and then to interpose it to come in between the king and the rook, and then there won't be any checkmate again. But that is not there. And lastly, is there a way to capture this rook here? No, the king cannot jump from here to capture the rook on a8. So it is impossible for this rook to get captured, right? If there was a bishop here, for example, on e4, so it can easily come here to capture the rook on a8. The bishop will capture the rook on a8, and then it is possible to um to prevent the checkmates like that. But in that situation, these three things that we have mentioned are not available. The three options are not available. Therefore, the rook to a8 is a checkmate, right? So, which brings us to how these three pawns that are meant to be protecting the king can also be the downfall of the king, right? Because now they prevent the king to be able to have any escape route. So, whenever you are playing like this and then you're already castled, one thing you want to do is you want to try as much as possible to create a breathing space for your piece, for your king, right? So in case of this kind of back rank check, we call this the back rank check, right? The back rank check is a situation whereby there is no other piece here that is guiding your king, and then there are three pawns here already blocking and preventing your king from coming out. So your opponent can just take advantage of that rank, right, and deliver a checkmate, right? So you want, like I was saying, you want to create a breathing space, play your pawn to h6 most of the time. So in case of this check like this, there will be a space on h7 where your king can just come to, and then they will escape from the back rank check. So you want to, take note of this, right? You want to consider this. We've talked about, what check is, and then you understand what checkmate is. If these three things or three options that we have stated that are available for the king, if they are not possible, then that is definitely a check. And remember, whenever we are playing a game and you want to prevent this kind of back rank checkmate, you want to push your pawn to h6, just create a breathing space, either this, whichever one you want to do, but make sure that there is a reason why you are pushing one. But most of the time, most players push h6 pawn just to create space for the king to come to h7. So you want to do that to prevent this kind of background checkmate. So now you understand what checkmate is, and you understand how to know if a game is a checkmate. But then how do you deliver checkmate as a player, right? How do you deliver checkmate as a player? So it is important to understand how to deliver checkmate as a player so that when you are playing a game, you end up winning your game, right? So there are three principles. There are three different principles you need to consider whenever you want to deliver a checkmate. Three different principles. Take note of these three principles. The first principle is that you need to use multiple pieces. You need to use multiple pieces. Whenever want to deliver a checkmate, you cannot, it is only in rare cases that you deliver a checkmate with a single piece. Just like we have this back rank mate here with the rook, right? And it is because the black king has a lot of squares that are opposing it, that are preventing it from coming out. The pawns preventing it from coming out, so it is possible. But most of the time, you use multiple pieces, at least two pieces to deliver a checkmate. So because these pieces are going to be working hand in hand with one another in order for you to deliver a checkmate, right? So whenever you want to deliver a checkmate, use multiple pieces. Secondly, if you want to deliver a checkmate, you need to push the king to the side or the edge of the board, right? It is the king at the center of the board has a lot of square to go to, right? Compared to the king that at the edge of the board, right? It has less square to go to, right? So that is why whenever you want to deliver a checkmate, the the second principle is that you push your king to the edge of the board. So these are the edges. Any squares like this at the edge of the board is where you can put your king, right? Is where you can make sure your opponent keep pushing your opponent king till they get to the edge of the board, any of these, or even the corner. In fact, preferably the corner, and then you deliver a beautiful checkmate. So the second principle is that you push your opponent's king to the edge of the board. And lastly, the third principle, which is like another important principle, is that you need to cut off any escape route, right? You need to cut off any escape route. In this case right here, the pawns have cut off the escape route of the black king. It's unfortunate, right? But in this situation, that allows this background to happen, because if there was a push here, if there was um a h8 h6 push here, it will be possible for this king to come to h7, right? So, and that would be the escape route, right? So you want to cut everything off. So even if, for example, there was h8 h6 push here, which will allow the bishop to come here. So before playing this, if you have your own white bishop, right, you want to probably place it somewhere like this. So it will be cutting off this h7 square, and the king cannot come there. And now you can even deliver the background mate again, right? So you see, so another principle is that you have to cut off your opponent's your king escape route. Wherever you know that your king can come out of your check from, you block it. You prevent the king from escaping from that square by placing one of your pieces there, right? So you see now that in order for you to checkmate, it requires the work of more than one piece, right? It's a combination of two or more of your pieces, right? It is only in special cases that you have this kind of background where you only need a single or piece to deliver the checkmate, right? So you need the combination, the work of two or more of your pieces. So again, I'm going to state the principles again. The principles you need in order to deliver a checkmate, right? A beautiful checkmate is that one, you need more than one pieces. You need multiple pieces to deliver a checkmate. Secondly, you need to push your king to the edge of the board, push it to the edge or the corner of the board. And lastly, you need to block to block every escape route of your opponent's king, prevent it from escaping, and then you will deliver a very beautiful checkmate. All right. So to summarize everything we've been talking about, we talked about checkmate, right? What checkmate is, and then we mentioned three things that you will need to use to determine if a check is also a checkmate. And we also talked about check when your king is under attack, and then you just need to move it away, right? So it is in the direct part of your opponent's piece. So you need to move your king away, and then things you need to know when your king is being checkmated is that the first one, your king does not have anywhere else to go, right? It doesn't have anywhere else to go, right? That's the first thing. And secondly, there is no piece that can come in between, that can interpose between the king and the attacking piece, right? And then the last one is that there's no way to capture the attacking piece. The piece that is attacking your king, there's no way to capture it. Then you know that that is a checkmate, and then the game is over. And we also mentioned some examples of checkmates that we have. We have the scholar's mate, which is like the fastest checkmate we know, where you can checkmate in just 4 moves. So it is impossible for you to be aware of this scholar's mate and find a way to prevent it. So in this situation where we have this scholar's mate, what black would have done in this situation is instead of playing their knight here, right? This knight here, this is a better move. Knight f6, and now you prevent the queen from even coming here in the first place. So it is because knight played c6 that allows the queen to come here and threaten the checkmate. But in this situation, another possible move here is to play this and prevent the king and the queen from having control on f7, right? So these are all different possible ways to prevent this color's mate. You might want to take note of them, right? But yes, that is not what we are doing today. We just want to understand checkmate. And another one important checkmate we talk about is the back rank checkmate, where we said these pawns on f7, g7, and h7 are preventing the king from coming out, and then a beautiful back rank checkmate has happened. So you want to avoid this by pushing your pawn to h6 or any other ones at all, but most of the time it is always h6. So you can create a path and an escape route for your king, right? So after talking about all of these checkmates and check, we also mentioned how you can deliver a checkmate yourself. We mentioned three principles you need to follow, right? The first one is that you need multiple pieces, right? You don't just need a single piece. It's only in special occasions that you need a single piece. You need multiple pieces that can work hand in hand as a team and then use it to deliver a checkmate. Secondly, you need to push your opponent's king to the edge of the board, to the edge and the corner of the board, right? So when it is at the corner or the edge, it has limited squares to run to, and then you can deliver a checkmate like that. And lastly, he said that you need to block the escape route. You need to prevent your opponent from escaping, right? By putting most of your pieces. Whenever you see that this place is possible after you check your king, the king is possible, your opponent king rather. After you check your opponent king, you see that this particular square is possible for the king to escape through that square. Place your piece there or place it somewhere that it will be controlling that square. So your king, your king will not be able to escape it. An example is when there's this pawn is already pushed now, it is already on h6, for example, and then there's a bishop here already, or you know that it's your turn to play after h6, the rook is still here, right? There's this h6 is pushed, right? So and there's a bishop here. So you want to place your bishop here first so that to be controlling this h7, right? So this is you trying as much as possible to block every escape route of your opponent's king, right? And then afterwards, when your opponent play any of their move, you can then now deliver your own checkmate from here, right? So you want to try as much as possible to block the escape route, and then you deliver a nice checkmate, right? So that is like a summary of everything that we have done in today's lesson. So tomorrow we'll try as much as possible to cover one of the most exciting chess tactics that we have seen before, right? So we are going to see how it plays out, and then we are going to learn a lot about this particular tactics, right? So you don't want to miss this video. If you find this video interesting, if you enjoy it, try as much as possible to subscribe so you can stay updated and get to know when other videos drop. Subscribe, like, comment. You can also comment about some other things you want me to talk about in chess, and then we'll talk about them. See you tomorrow. Bye.